So today I'm joined with Jessie Kaur from Kaur Collective. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited about this podcast because when I saw your account, I was just like, yes, this is what we need. This is who I need to speak to because what you do looks so interesting. So let's start there with your Sikhi story and how you found Kaur Collective.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me and giving a voice to Core Collective. You're doing really great work. Just wanted to quickly
Thank
add that in.
you.
I think you're very welcome. um, I'm the daughter, youngest daughter in my family, and my parents have always been quite religious. My mom has a real great connection with Sikhi and creation, and she has been the cornerstone of my own Sikhi kind of journey. My dad as well is very connected to Sikhi. I think he learned a lot from my mom and her regiment of inclusion of Sikhi in her life. And, you know, I think always honoring my parents is a good first step. But I think the lineage within my family is worth acknowledging as well. Both sides of my ancestry, paternal and maternal, really strong roots in Sikhi, a lot of giving back, a lot of really abiding by Sikhi's values and living lives in accordance. So I think I've had really great role models in my life. And I think also my older siblings have been good role models in their own way of navigating Sikhi and including Sikhi within their lives. And both my sisters are married, so I've had the opportunity to see how they are teaching their own children the path of Sikhi and including Sikhi in times of hardship, and I think even in uplifting times in their life. So I think I've had a strong backbone of people in my life, personal kind of circle of connecting with Sikhi. You know, I was also lucky as we were growing up in this town that we lived in. There was Khalsa camps that used to come into the city during the summers. So I got the experience of, you know, waking up really early, going to the Gurdwara, doing Bhat, spending time with people, a lot of kids who were my age at that time, how they were so focused on Sikhi and aligning themselves with Sikhi. So I think those were really good foundational steps for me to understand Sikhi. And I think also growing up in that town, I experienced a lot of racism. Like my cousin and I were coming back from the Gurdwara with my parents. She was still wearing her Punjabi outfit. We went to the park and these girls came after us and they tried to light our hair on fire. So I think there was an opportunity for me to see how there was otherness that was happening in my life, in my sort of Western world, and how being Sikh, being brown, being Punjabi was looked upon as not as an other kind of experience. So I think as I grew older, you know, in your teenager years, you try to fit in that Western world and you realize you're never going to fit in because you're the wrong color and you have different lived experiences than people who are Caucasian. So as I grew older, I think, and you know, life it can be unkind at times. I found myself resonating with Sikhi more and more as I'm getting older and really looking at how I can include Sikhi into my life and include it as a journey and a stepping stone into areas of my life. So that was quite a long story about my experiences with Sikhi. I think about 5 years ago, Core Collective had a first iteration. It was called Core Project, and myself and a photographer were doing photos and stories, and the project did really well. We were featured in a lot of Western magazines, Allure, Vogue, Harper's Bazaar. I had the chance to go to Apple and talk about Sikhi and Kaurs and our identity and how we can use our identity to navigate the world. So those experiences were really great. And then, you know, health reasons, we stopped that project and our photographer moved on to do some other things. I really took that time to think about, you know, we had something with Core Project, the development and giving space for Kaurs to share their voices, their stories, their experiences, and navigate life through understanding how they navigate life through a variety of lenses. So I did a lot of workshopping, understanding what needed to be, what I felt at that time, be built out by almost like a community. And because of that almost year work of trying different, classes and workshops and interesting kind of little places for women to ask more questions. And at the time before COVID, experiencing how Kaurs can come together and talk about their experiences of being Kaurs. So loved that whole kind of journey of understanding and development. I call it my research and development period. And then, as I was going through that period, a lot of great people in the community. When you're doing any kind of this type of seva, it's always scary to do all the work yourself. You don't want to take a misstep, and you also don't want to bombard yourself by doing all this work and then not including other people. Luckily, some great people in the community, men and women in our community, some who are not even of the Sikh faith, stepped up and said, hey, you're doing something really interesting. We'd love to be a part of it. And now our team is about 10 people. And we are kind of building out this movement, so to speak, with Kaur Collective of really featuring Kaur stories. So really taking that element of Kaur project and the photography that we were doing in that kind of first iteration. So that's kind of a cornerstone. And as a person who is a storyteller and our faith and our Punjabi heritage also connects us with storytelling, that's a big feature of it. And then the rest of it is, layers of how we can connect to Sikhi in a variety of really creative ways that sometimes are modern and sometimes are traditional, but gives opportunity for Kaurs and everyone else, Singhs are included. We're very inclusive to ensure that people are grasping Sikhi, being curious about Sikhi and taking Sikhi and applying it to their lives in their own journeys.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, we were talking before as well about how you spoke at Apple, and I got very excited by that. But what was it that they asked you to come and talk about?
So they had a diversity and inclusion council. This was back in 2017, and they were actually they were kind of ahead of their times, because in this last year with the Black Lives Movement, other, diversity kind of conversations are just starting for some companies. They were a little bit ahead in that they have a very diverse working population, some who are Sikh. So those employees had expressed that they want to share their diversity and their heritage in a way that they can share it with the entire company. So just like you found us at this page, whoever worked in that diversity kind of area of Apple also found us and went, hey, this is really neat that Kaurs or women typically are not front and center when it comes to faith, particularly Sikhi. You're doing something different. Would you be interested in coming and having a conversation about being a Kaur and diversity and inclusion and just, your own journeys? So it was really cool to, I had blown up photos of some of the women that we had showcased in that first iteration of Kaur Project. And I literally stood up there, did, a little bit of an intro of Kaur Project at the time. And I talked about these women's stories and their experiences. So, there was a grandma that had walked across during partition time and her experiences. There was a young girl who was being sexually abused by her father and her experiences. Our stories are so, while we have some similarities, they're also so unique in the lived experiences and how we are so resilient in overcoming adversity, and how, whether we realize it or not, this beautiful inclusion of being a Kaur, and whether it's our middle name or we use it as our last name, kind of gives us a direction of applying Sikhi, particularly when we have hard moments in our lives, and navigating our journeys by applying Sikhi in those times. So that's a real big commonality for women, is, when they're experiencing abuse or depression or losing, miscarriages. Women at those times usually are going back to their faith and exploring how their faith can help them overcome those obstacles. Such a beautiful way to navigate life. We don't really realize it, or we don't, give credit to it, but it is something that we've discovered over the years. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I really like how you said, like, all of the stories are very unique, and it's so nice that you share these stories as well, because as much as they are unique, a lot of people can relate to different stories, and that brings me on to your podcast. And the series, I believe, is called My Body Is Mine Alone. And I listened to the episode My Body, My Space. And within that episode, you spoke, I believe there was four of you, four
Yeah.
different girls. And you spoke about how body issues exist, and it might be a cultural issue, but as well as that, there's kind of this expectation of how a Gaud or a Punjabi woman or an Indian woman or a brown woman is meant to look. And I related to that so much. I was telling you before as well, I'm a very skinny girl. And growing up here, does your mum not feed you? And it's not the easiest thing to hear, because I know my mum feeds me, but again, you can't argue with these auntia that are saying these things, so you kind of just have to nod and continue. But I got that quite a lot, and I still do. I'm still very skinny, but I related to that because a lot of the time we talk about how, we're expected to look one type of way, and especially in Sikhi as well, where women and men are meant to keep their gaze, which is another thing that I think a lot of Gauds find difficult, is keeping their gaze. And I've spoken about this in a podcast before as well. So why is it important that you take platforms like this and speak about these issues, and how does empowering Gauds make a change? Because obviously it's a good place to start. And again, listening to that podcast, I really appreciate it, because not a lot of people are brave enough to speak about things like that nowadays. What does this bring about? What does this achieve?
Wow, really great questions and thoughts. I guess I'll first start with, we've identified there's a brown body experience, and I think we mention that in the podcast quite often. And when I say the brown body experience, it's not exclusively just for Kaurs. I think it's all South Asians. When you look into Indigenous experiences and Black women's experiences, other women of colors experiences, if I can be so bold to include all of them, they all have similar kind of brown body experiences. And I think it has to do with, definitely there's an underlying of white supremacy that plays into this. And I think that's a whole podcast in itself. So I'll just keep it at that one line. But I think it's really interesting. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do a body kind of series within the podcast was, as I've been uncovering all these women's stories over and over again, there is a disconnect between ourselves and our bodies. And if you look into Sikhi, and this is where things kind of get a little bit, you have to dig deeper and harder. And I'm just on the cusp of some big discoveries, but I'll mention the ones that I'm kind of currently really curious about. Women are creators naturally. We give birth, we can have children, and we're the closest thing to creation. But there's such a disconnect between our bodies and how we feel about ourselves. And over and over again, as women were sharing, their stories about being depressed, unable to have children, feeling fat, being shamed, being too skinny, not being white enough, being too dark. All of these things are being hairy. There's so many experiences and so much judgment that we have around women, and there's no place for us as women to share that. Just like you shared, you feel skinny. For 90% of my life, I can empathize with you because I'm also 6 feet tall and very skinny. So my mom also got those concerns from other people. And there's this idea that everyone has the ability to make judgments or remarks about our bodies. Men don't have this. And if they do, it's not done in the same way. And I think even within our own Sikhi community, women who wear the stars also have added layers of complexity on the brown body experience of, there's a lot of great academic articles written in this area. I encourage people to look deeper into theory and academia, read books about Sikhi, particularly Sikhi books that are written by Sikh women, and discover that while they're keeping their hair, there's also ideas that should they get laser before they get married? How do they experience life when they have hair growth? And as being a brown woman who does not wear the stad, I also have had experiences of feeling like, what do you do with the hair that's on your body? The unwanted hair. And I think it's a multi-layered, super complex area of our navigating these experiences. But I think if we don't start conversations about our experiences and our bodies, then it's such a disservice to our core community. For example, I can give you some health data. We're really focusing on some health work within the core community. South Asian women have one of the highest rates of removal of their uteruses when they're older in their lives. Unsure of, their sexual body parts, or, I guess that's the best way of saying it. Feeling depressed about their bodies, feeling that, their menstrual cycle is dirty, all of these things that we know, and there's some great Kaurs doing exemplary work in menstrual health, aligning it with Sikhi. When we look at Gurbani, none of it is looked at as dirty or gross. It is looked at in a beautiful way, because we are part of creation. Going back to, if we're able to give birth and have children, maybe that's not the right way of saying it, but you get the gist of it, then if we're creating children, then we're part of that process. And I think we need to explore this more. I would like all women within our community to be feeling proud of their bodies, being empowered, knowing that, being skinny or a larger size or wearing a dastad, these are all beautiful ways of expressing Sikhi and being yourself. We're all not going to look the same, and just like our stories are not the same. And we have to have ways for us to know that we're okay. We're created by God, and we were meant to be the way we are, and we have to be okay with it. And I think it's also, as we become more self-empowered, commentary from other people won't have the same weight as it does if we don't have that self-love and self-empowerment. So it's an area that we really need to work on. Some really great, powerful people doing really exemplary work. And as the months go on, we're hoping to really collaborate with Kaurs and non-Kaurs who are doing this work, because, showcasing their work and collaborating with them and bringing the best of what they're doing to our wider audience I think is a great opportunity for Kaur Collective.
Definitely. And I completely agree with what you said. I think a lot of the time it's based on, things that have been said about how a woman, a brown woman, I'm going to say any type of woman should look.
Yeah.
We kind of, we're so used to seeing, magazines with these beautiful women. And I think it's kind of created this look on ourselves where we're like, well, I don't want to look like that. And I think that is very like beginning of it. And I think social media makes it a lot worse because you can see, on your Instagram, these pictures of these very stunning women. It gets kind of difficult because then we're kind of looking into ourselves and we're like, oh, I don't look like that, And so what you've done with this podcast is really good because and again, like you said, like a lot of people are talking about body images and like the issues that a lot of women have with that kind of self-love side of things. Learning that, the way we look is Maharaj's hukum, and there's nothing greater than Maharaj's hukum,
Yeah.
is the best way to go about it. As I said, I struggled with being such a skinny girl and hearing all sorts of things. It's not easy growing up being the skinny girl because you get told, or you don't look good, or I think the worst comment I've got in school is put your bones away, and it's kind of like, oh well, it's not nice hearing those things, but you get to a point in your life where you're like, Maharaj's Hokum is the greatest. And I can genuinely say now that I'm truly, really in love with how skinny I am. I really don't care. And I'm working on trying to get to a point where I can be more in love with my body. I think one issue that is very difficult for me now and something that I'm working on is my guess. Growing my guess and falling in love with my guess is kind of the next step in my journey. And I've spoken to many Kaurs about the same, like very similar issues where it's it's looked at as dirty or unhygienic on a woman, but on a man, it's manly and it's normal. And
Yeah.
that's kind of an issue that needs to be tackled because, what's the difference between hair on a man and hair on a woman? And why is it such an issue that a woman is hairy? On brown skin, you're going to see it a lot more. And I think that's where you get a lot more comments about your hair. It's that idea of kind of falling in love with your body, accepting that it's Maharaj's hukum, and that obviously takes time. As you said, like loads of people have gone through very difficult situations, but then eventually there does come a point where you kind of just you go with it and you're okay with it and you've fallen in love with yourself. And my sort of question that a question that comes to mind, and this is like kind of based on what I'm going through at the moment as well with my guests, and a lot of other courses are going through with their guests as well, is how can we kind of all reach this common ground of it's actually okay? Because sometimes it's not just men that are the issue, it's the women within our gone, within our band, within our community as well, that look at other women and go, that's not normal, you should get rid of that. So
Absolutely. And I think what you've hit on is, while it may not be men who, there's a whole different set of ideas of men and how they are guiding or making commentary on women's bodies. But I think what you alluded to about women commenting on other women is really them upholding patriarchy. We have all these ideas of what our community should look like and how it's built out currently, especially in the diaspora, and how it is, how Sikhi is been playing out, I guess is the best way to say it, unfolding. And I think when women are commenting on other women, it is part of patriarchy and them upholding a patriarchal system. So I think that's a hard, challenging way for people to, I don't have all the answers of how to break down the patriarchy. I think creating spaces like Kaur Collective, there's a great Kaur magazine called Kaur Life. You're doing the work that you're doing. Valerie Kaur in the US does some great work. There's other women all across the globe who are creating, whether it's pages or groups, or giving voice to showcasing alternatives to this patriarchal system that we have, or way of thinking about Sikhi. Maybe not even system, a way of thinking of about Sikhi. And I think it is goes back to my comment about we disconnect ourselves from our bodies in order to survive life, not to thrive in life, but just for survival purposes. I think as we get closer, our body and how sacred it is, and how we are an extension of creation, that self-empowerment, self-love, the beauty of our bodies, we need to, as Kaurs individually and as in groups and as a larger community, need to reconcile our feelings towards our bodies, and be proud of them, and honor them, and navigate them through them, not through a capitalistic white supremacy kind of based patriarchy system, but through a feminine creation kind of perspective of and I'm not an expert in this field, but Kaurs who are doing a lot of great work in periods, and doing work through the seasons of our period. So in the month of when you have higher energy and more energy, doing a lot of your work then, and when you are in your menstrual cycle, to kind of decrease the amount of work you're doing. I'm just paraphrasing right now. I don't know all of the details of it, but I think opening up that access and giving voice to those women who are leading some of that work is really important. There's a woman that we've featured on Kaur Collective, Dr. Or she's completing her PhD, so soon she'll be a doctor. Tak Bindal Takdir is her full name. And she's doing some great work in this area, but she's accompanied by other great Kaurs who are also doing work in this area. So I think once we identify who's doing what, we need to shine a light into those areas and give them lots of space so that they can lead us into closing that gap, helping us reconcile our feelings about our bodies, and navigating this self-empowerment, self-love through the lens of Sikhi, and really honoring that we are an extension of creation.
There is so much space as well on with social media, with the internet. There's so much space where we can shine a light on these women that are doing such amazing things, and especially for the next generation, they're going to be born and raised with the internet. That's all they're going to see. And it shows the importance of the internet now as well, with the coronavirus pandemic, where everything's moved online, and how much having everything online has impacted everyone's lives. That's the way we get the alerts about what's happening in India with the Kisaans and the protests and stuff. So yeah, what you said is correct. We need to shine a light on these women, because that's what the future generation are going to see, and that's what they're going to grow up with. What else can that achieve? What else can shining a light on these women achieve for not just the future generation, but what about the generation now that are watching it?
Just today, you mentioned the Kisaan movement. British Vogue has done an article on the Kaurs who are at the front and center of this movement. And that just shows there's this beautiful renaissance of female awakening that's happening within our community. I never thought that we'd see this happening in India, where women are standing shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts to give voice to farming, food security, and land rights. It just shows how women have been part of the Sikhi movement all along. And I think anytime women are part of an uprising, no movement can happen without women. You know, if we look at Sikhi's history, and this is something I explore over and over again. In fact, I have at as nauseum, I probably drive my mom up the wall of how much I talk about how women were part and parcel of Sikhi and Sikhi history. You know, she loves that I am so passionate, but she also probably rolls her eyes, bless her soul, for being my sounding board for a lot of this thought and my very bizarre questions that I pose to her. But I say this often. I probably say this line about 7 to 8 times a week. Sikhi was founded with women being part of the movement. You know, Guru Nanak's older sister, Bibi Nanaki, was front and center. She was the first Sikh, in fact. And then as you go through the Guru's lineage of their beautiful history, you see their mothers, you know, their wives, you know, some of them I think had daughters, you know, neighbors standing up, you know, to really be part of this movement. And I think like all faiths and religions, women have sometimes been absent from the history of showcasing the history of women. You know, you look at any religion and women are always kind of silenced. But we've been there all along. And I think now that this uprising is happening in India with the Kisaan movement, and it's not just in Punjab, it's all over India, but you know, we're talking about Kaurs right now, so we'll be specific to that. I think it's showing that, you know, we were given the platform of equality and equity within our faith, and now we're taking that. We're taking up the space that we have always been given right to. And I think it's great to see that all this different age group of women in India are part of our role models now. Of if they can do it, we can also do it as well. So I think for being in the diaspora, both of us are, you know, you're in the UK, I'm in Canada. I think it gives us that, oh, you know, if you see someone else doing it, you also have that opportunity to go, hey, you know, that's pretty cool. How can I take Sikhi and add it into my life? So I think, and, you know, the first part of this question was, how do we give more voice to our bodies? And I think when we reconcile our feelings towards our bodies and become empowered, and we be empowered by overall by Sikhi and taking up space as Kaurs within this beautiful faith, that we are helping one another, we're helping the men in our community, and this is what the Sikhi movement is all about, is being part of this oneness and this energy of applying the values and walking the path of the Sikhi journey, and moving the faith and being good humans, basically, as we navigate the world. So I think it helps us. I think it helps, pays homage to our past generations, the generations that are standing up for the Kisaan movement. And I think it plants the seeds for future generations so that Sikhi carries on as well. That's important to me, of where's the legacy of Sikhi? What are we moving forward as the generation who now is going to be responsible for Sikhi as well?
It's nice that you said,
It's a lot of thoughts.
said it like that. No, it's really nice that you said it like that, because it has me thinking, you know, a lot of wars and a lot of things have found their kind of purpose through the history of Sikhi, and looking at, you know, the women in Sikhi especially, you kind of, you see what these women have achieved, and you kind of want to be able to do the same thing. You know, looking at maybe Mata Sahib Gorji, or, you know, my Bar Gorji, like, I think it's seeing things like that, and looking at it now, like when you're living in a world that tells you you can't do a certain thing because you're a woman, seeing that women have been able to do that and have been able to achieve that, it kind of helps with finding that divine purpose, let's say. So for you, you know, what woman in Sikhi inspired you, and do you feel like you found that purpose through a woman in Sikhi?
Definitely. Absolutely, I have. You know, I think part of the kind of behind the scenes research I'm doing right now is, you know, you do hear about my Bago and other cores, but there's just a handful that we really keep learning about. And here, especially in Canada, you hear about them at Visakhi, and but beyond that, you don't hear about them a lot, if I can be frank. I think now with this Kisaan movement, there is more imagery and illustration of how we can be more like them. So I think for myself, you know, I respect and I honor and I love that I've heard the stories of those exemplary few women, Kaurs, who have stood up and really showcased that they were so focused on the faith and they were able to overcome adversity. But for me, I think as a researcher, as a person who really likes academia, who is also, you know, holding space with others for Kaur Collective, I think it's my duty now to continue the research to find more women like them. So, you know, I read, you know, the four Sabjade. They had a neighbor friend who I don't know her name, but I'll be fine. I can find it and I can send it to you later if you're interested. She converted to Sikhi because she was so enthralled with the movement.
Mhm,
I've never heard of her before, you know.
mhm,
So I think going through Sikhi's history books, you know, I'm going through academic articles right now, and I'm really trying to find more cores to highlight of history, because our Kaur Collective community has asked us to give more historical cores reverence and really showcase them. But I think part of it for me is, while they were exemplary and I really appreciate their history, and that I can go back into storytelling, into our past and find examples. So that's a bonus for me. Then I think as a person who is always trying to apply Sikhi to present day and look at Sikhi through a modern kind of perspective, and modern not meaning changed, but Sikhi through a 2021 lens, is I need to find similar stories through present day Kaurs. So this is why I feel like the storytelling that we're focusing on through Kaur Collective is so important. Number one, it gives us a pulse of where the Kaur community is. You know, not every story is pleasant. Not every Kaur has completely found their or discovered or rediscovered their connection to being a Sikh woman, being a Kaur. And I think it gives us opportunity to see that we have modern day warriors amongst us, because we all are navigating life. Life is not always easy. There's lots of challenges. And how are we overcoming these challenges? How are we building our self-resiliency? Or how are we building daily practices to be strong women, to be warriors, to be lionesses? I think that there's importance in that. And then I think there is importance of looking within our own family and the people, like our COVID bubbles almost, of women who we can lean on to, who are warriors in their own regard or warriors in making, who are really showcasing the values of Sikhi. And, you know, I have some of those women who are not even of the Sikh faith. Sikhi shows up everywhere, in everyone, and you can learn something from everyone. But like I had said, and I had made a couple of jokes, my mom is one of those women. And how do I build a strong bond? How do I She tells me Sakhis almost every second day within Sikhi, and I record some I write down, and then as a researcher, I go back into the internet and I find those stories and I reread them, and I kind of am compiling all these Sakhis that my mom is bringing light to. But I think if we're not actively searching, we're not actively curious about, our place in the world, then that's sad. I think now, especially during COVID, it is we've been handed an opportunity of quietness to really build this resiliency, look at our history, kind of analyze, think of stuff, create comparisons, and see who we want to be in this world. That divine purpose, we all have that divine purpose. Sikhi encourages that divine purpose. And I think it's up to us to really remove kind of some of the bullshit that we all experience and discover or rediscover what that purpose is.
Our lives are so similar. From just hearing what you said there was something that you said as well about just before I come to that, something that you said about how finding Sikhi where Sikhi doesn't actually lie in someone that isn't sick, being able to find Sikhi in that person, that was beautiful, like really beautiful. I've never thought of it like that way, but I absolutely love that. And the other thing that you said about your mum telling you Sakhis, I've grown up with my mum is very similar to yours in terms of her being very into Sikhi. She was born and raised in a Sikh household, and I've grown up hearing Sakhis from my mum. And I think through a lot of those Sakhis, I've found Sikhi and fallen in love with Sikhi so much more, to the point where I can, say that I'm on this journey of finding my divine purpose. And you look at, the Kaurs in our history, but you can also see the Kaurs now, and what they do. The likes of my mum, who is, an incredible woman. She does so much, but also, my nanny, who did so much as well. All of these Kaurs that are here nowadays, which is why I love what you do, because you take Kaurs that are going through such hard times or difficulties, and Kaurs that have come out of that or experiencing that, and you share their stories. And it's very uplifting to hear stories from other Kaurs, because you can kind of relate, and it also helps other people. So it's very nice that you have a platform like that. And I feel like, are there things that you've learned through this platform? Because I mean, hearing so many stories like that, you must have also taken on so much from what other people have been saying. But what is an example of something that you've learned from another Kaur or from a project?
Absolutely. I think I learn something new every single day. It's a treasure trove. This platform, and even the first iteration of Kaur Collective, I've been gifted this beauty of learning Sikhi. And as a researcher and a person who's always reading and learning and trying to be better, this has been the biggest gift of my life. I think one of the biggest aha moments for me was Sikhi is the most interfaith faiths out there, like interspiritual. If you go back into Sikhi, and I've read some books about Guru Nanak, particularly when it was the 550th birth anniversary. I spent almost a full year reading everything and anything I could find about Guru Nanak. I was kind of on borderline obsessive, if I'm honest. And I loved the idea, and a Kaur really brought this to light for me. Was he had these friends who, one was Hindu, one was Muslim, and they went around together and they talked to people. Literally, they just had posed questions, and they wanted to know people's prayer practices. They wanted to know people's worldviews, not in an attempt to convert people, but to ensure that they knew what value life is. And all faiths, while Sikhi is so special in so many ways, there is alignment in, some of the crux of what Sikhi is, of, being a good person, being honest. Many other faiths have those kind of backbones as well, right? So I think it was really beautiful that Guru Nanak never was out there trying to convert people to Sikhi. In fact, he was saying to Bhai Mardana, you don't need to convert. Come and jam, have a music session with me. Speak, God's creation. Let's sing about creation. Let's enjoy spiritual journeys. And then you, Bhai Mardana, go and be the best Muslim you can totally be. And here I'll be the best Sikh I can be. And his other friends, Hindu or whomever they were, he was creating this uprising within them as well, to go back and to enjoy their own faith and interpret and be better humans. And I think that's what the beauty of Sikhi is. Our first word within the Mool Mantar is ik. And we forget this sometimes, that we are all one. And while we may have different stories, we may be, come from different faiths, different lived experiences, at the end of the day, we have many similarities. And if we can focus on similarities and look at differences, but not be judgmental in those differences, but bring those similarities and differences so that we can really come together in beautiful ways, that's more important. And that's what life is. And I think, as we've seen the Black Lives Matter movement, tons of racism conversations, particularly in the US and Canada, that's happening. But I've seen things on UK reporting as well for the last few years about, there is this awareness that racism exists. And I think if we take faith or faith-based concepts and apply them to racism, meaning be like Guru Nanak, have those conversations. I find myself actually going about and asking people this one simple line: how is your faith? How is your faith today? It can be a myriad of things, and you should see the answers I get back. People give me bizarre answers. They also talk about their spiritual practices, their own resiliency. And I think if we're able to remove the barriers that we have, be the bridges to be embettering ourselves. And that's what Guru Nanak was doing, and all the Gurus were doing, was creating this unity in times of turmoil. They were saying, hey, we all don't have to be the same, but we have to be good people, and we have to adhere to the ways of life that we're choosing to navigate. And in our case, it's Sikhi. So to be a good Sikh, I need to follow the values. I need to, build that self-resiliency, create those daily practices so that I'm not just saying I'm a Sikh, I'm actually doing the work and walking the talk of being a good person, being a Sikh. Yeah.
You touched on a lot of, like, I would say ekta, like unity between our Qawm and our Band. And Sikhi can kind of project the strengths of our community, of having Sangat. Sikhi talks a lot about having Sangat and the importance of it. And we can see now as well with the Kisaan protests how important it is to have Sangat, but also when it comes to racism or bullying, for example, which the UK has seen recently with the young boy who was bullied, and the uproar that was kind of built based on that one event, and how everyone kind of touched on their own experiences with bullying, and how the Sangat was so quick to help that young boy, but then also to help the farmers. There is so much strength where Sikhi lies. And as of right now, because of the Kisaan movement, a lot of people are trying to separate Sikhi from the farmer protests. And I can't lie, I don't entirely agree with it, just purely based on the fact that when you look at protests like that, Sikhi teaches us to help those that need it. You know, you saw with the Black Lives Movement, Sikhs were there because we understand, we know how hard it is to grow up Sikh and not be liked because you're Sikh, because you look different. Like you said, you know, you've had experiences with bullying as well. So it's something that we've all gone through, and trying to pull away Sikhi from the Kisaan movement, it's very difficult because you know we go back to the women, the Kaurs that are there at the front line, you know, helping these men through these protests. You know, even you know I've seen posts about women making the rotiya and just being there, and the way that the men appreciate that, because it's just nice having a woman there as almost their backbone, but also almost on the front line as well. We are very much so involved in these movements, and within that, you know, finding the sort of strength within the band, looking at it through the kind of Sikhi lens, you can also find strengths within ourselves. You know, and this touches again on our body image conversation, where Sikhi can help us find the strength within ourselves to look at ourselves and be like, do you know what? I actually don't care what X, Y, and Z has to say about my body. Do you agree?
I definitely agree. You know, there's a passage by Guru Nanak, and he makes a reference to farming. So I'll just read you. I'll read the English translation. Make your mind the farmer, good deeds the farm, modesty the water, and your body the field. Let creation's name be the seed, contentment the plow, and humble dress the fence. Through deeds of love, the seeds will sprout and your home will flourish. So, you know, I think there was reference to farming because farming is if we're not able to feed ourselves, we won't be able to eat, right? So again, there's that creation reference of if we plant seeds into the ground, you know, we do the hard work, the day-to-day practice of tilling the soil, watering the plants, you know, harvesting the food. If we actually take those farming references like it is in Gurbani and apply it to our own lives, it's pretty similar if you really notice it. And that's been a big aha moment for me in this last few months of, wow, okay, how important farming is, how food security is important, how our lineages and the if we don't have access to food, clean water, and we're not able to make our honest livings, then big components of Sikhi will it become more challenging. So I think the farmers' protest, and I wouldn't even say protest anymore. I would actually call it a movement, because it is such an uprising. And like today, Rihanna is tweeting about it. Like, that's incredible. You know, British Vogue is finally getting on to it. You know, Human Rights is taking notice to this. So I think, you know, all of us have to eat, whatever faith background we are in. But I think taking the principles of what Sikhi talks about with farming is very important for our community. I don't know all of the sides of how people are posing the movement, and I think that's open to everyone to have their own interpretations of whether they think it is just a Sikhi movement and it's not a Sikhi movement. You know, that's not up for me to judge. Just like your spiritual practices and how you connect to the faith of Sikhi is for you, and mine is for me. And I notice I say this to my mom all the time, and she goes, you come into this life empty-handed and you leave this life empty-handed. And what you do and your own connection and relationship with Guruji is up to you, whether you're going to create those daily practices for yourself, whether you're going to create self-resiliency through Sikhi, whether you're going to, have an honest work ethic, whether you're going to give back. There's a lot of judgment of it has to follow these rules and it has to be this and it has to be that. But we as people, particularly as Kaurs, we need to navigate these experiences of Sikhi the way we need to navigate them, because it is our own individual relationships with Sikhi and God that are really important. That's something that, for me, kind of creates a bubble for me of, Simran, if you do Mool Mantar 20 times a day, while you may be praying for me, you're doing the work. I have to do the work for myself. So I think we don't realize that that Sikhi is really a way of life, and it's a way to journey through Sikhi, and the path of Sikhi is going to be different for everyone. Like my parents took Amrit when they turned 50, and they did it because my niece was going to be born, my eldest niece, and they decided to ensure that the next generation coming into the world within our own family circle has role models who are in this path of Sikhi. That doesn't mean that she has to take that path at that time. But if the backbone is there and the space is crafted, then she's now your age, and she when she has a challenging time, her first go-to is to put on her headphones and listen to Gurbani so that it calms her. So I think if we are thinking that everyone is going to have the same path, it's not going to happen. We have to give that space for people to be curious and excited by Sikhi. And I always say that, and people think I'm nuts, but how you and I are talking about Sikhi and we're so passionate about it, it's because we've had really great experiences. Someone, particularly our moms, have ignited a flame in us to go, wow, that was really interesting. I need to go and do my own research and figure out what this is for myself. And I hope others get that as well.
Definitely. I think looking at and hearing the stories through your platform as well would be really helpful for a lot of people as well. Because sometimes it does take that one person or that one conversation or that one Saki that kind of changes everything. I mean, I was speaking to a girl the other day who told me that their kind of moment of realization that Sikhi is the way for them was after watching the Jar Sahibzade film, and that's when you could see like the power of creating platforms for kind of the next generation, because I think that Sikhi doesn't change. It is that one thing that hasn't changed, but the way that we can project Sikhi has kind of adapted, because we can now do it through so many different means. Whether that is through a protest where Sikhs are very much so there and showing their supports, or through movements, or through a film, or through podcasts like we're doing right now. I think that having that platform and having that space to talk about Sikhi the way we are, and how passionate we are about it, it can easily help someone else. Because I mean, mine was very similar. Like you said, you hear Sakis from your mum and you end up falling in love with Sikhi the way that we have. And that kind of leads me to my next point of just your company and what you do. You spoke about how you spoken at Apple before, and have talked about Kaurs there, but what else has Kaur Collective done actively to help Kaurs in general? I know you talked about Sukmi Sahib the Bart as well, that is done weekly.
I would say I wouldn't even call us a company. I would call us kind of a movement. So that part of this is there's many aspects. I think the central part, like I noted, is the storytelling of Kaurs, modern Kaurs, present day Kaurs, and trying to create a variety of stories. So different age groups, different lived experiences, different countries, the sod wearing Kaurs, the sod wearing Kaurs, you know, even exploring sexuality, just a variety of Kaurs is important to showcase, because there's so many of us. And then I think the podcast is another kind of cornerstone. We've released 3 episodes, and that was our first series, and it was all about body and the brown body experience. We have about 4 other series that we are, they're all done. And we'll be uploading them week by week. And they talk about essentially Kaurs and our faith relationship, the basics of Sikhi, and our relationships with our mothers, also our relationships with our fathers. So really a wide variety of topics. And then something that has come about for the last year has been the virtual Sukhmani Sab. So Sonia Kaur leads that every single week. We haven't missed even 1 week in the last year, particularly during COVID. I'm so proud of her for stepping up and taking up this seva. And we have a wide variety of age groups, Kaurs and Singhs, that are showing up via Zoom, and in turn, they read the Ashpatis. If you're interested in reading, then people can read in turn, and if not, then you can listen. So we have a real good following of people who show up every single week, and it's a good grounding practice for them. Right before you and I had gotten onto this podcast, like I mentioned, another young Kaur, Amritpal Kaur from New York, has stepped up, and we are just launching a virtual Mool Mantra every week that she's going to be leading. So what I love so far, and what I'm trying to showcase to you, is while we have this platform, what we're really doing is asking the community of Kaurs and Singhs and non-Kaurs to step up and start some type of seva. So those 2 women have started those ideas of what their seva is. Then we have Neelu Kaur Anand, an auntie that's within the community. She's super passionate about cooking, so she'll be doing Zoom online cooking classes. The very first one is coming up this Sunday. She's going to show Kaurs and non-Kaurs and Singhs, whoever wants to show up to this, how to make Kara Prashad. Something so important, and something that not a lot of us know how to do. It's kind of, you know, I know it because of my own mom, but some Kaurs are scared of how do you make it, how does it come about? And I think now that there's less access to gurdwaras, people are trying to do ardasa at home, and they want to make prasad, but they don't know how to go about it. So she'll be starting kind of a series of basic fundamental kind of Punjabi recipes that are needed for Kaurs and Singhs to know, and that's a good first for them. Then we have Jessie Kaur auntie, who is such a great artist, and we're just pinning down a date with her to work on. Her art is focused on pointillism, so she writes Waheguru about 5 bajillion times per painting. So she wants to host a way for people to create meditative paintings. So again, really showcasing how people are coming together, wanting to do things, but not necessarily knowing how to organize, how to do logistics, and how to promote things. So we're taking on that work, and we're giving them the freedom to explore their divine purpose and their creativity, and really helping them propel their voices. What's really great that's coming up is Dr. Ratinder Kaur, who is a cultural anthropologist. She is starting Punjabi classes. because something that's been important for me and I've been working on for the last year and a half is improving my own Punjabi, of reading and writing and understanding what Punjabi is, because you can't understand Gurbani without a grasp of what Punjabi is. So there's a real disconnect for Kaurs of not knowing the language, and then that way not knowing what Gurbani is, and their own connection kind of decreases towards Sikhi because of the lack of understanding. But what's interesting with Dr. Ratinder Kaur is she's doing this Punjabi class through the lens of women and intersectional feminism. So you get to hear about, or learn rather, the history of Punjabi through women, connection to the land, to the geography, to arts, to culture. She references a lot of women painters, books, historians, all through Punjabi. Plus you learn the basic fundamentals of Punjabi. And then as the levels increase and we keep on launching them, is different ways for Kaurs to really read and have robust Punjabi language skills. Then 2 Kaurs in California had reached out to us to do a book club, and we are starting with this book by Malika Kaur, who's a lawyer in California. I think, I'm not sure where she teaches, I think it's California. So, and it kind of talks about the Punjab farmers, the land. So a lot of really great, exciting programming that's coming about, all really funneled through the community of Kaurs. We're just kind of the platform that helps behind the scenes. And I think that's really where my personality fits well in. While the page says founder, really I'm just kind of leading from behind. I want other people's, their stories, their voices, their talents, their divine purposes to be showcased. And I kind of just accelerate things from behind. Happy to have these kind of conversations when and if needed. But for the most part, I kind of am incognito in well-intentioned ways so that others can have access to find their voice or rediscover it and really showcase it.
So, Jessie, thank you so much for joining me. I've absolutely loved this and loved getting to know about Kaur Collective and what it is that you do. For anyone that doesn't know where they can get in touch with you, please do let them know and what they can achieve by messaging you or DMing you or whatever it is.
Sure. So our website is kaurcollective.com. Right now, just the stories are showcased on the website, but we'll be including all the classes and workshops that I had mentioned. There's a contact form on there if somebody wants to connect with me through email. We have a very active Instagram page and somewhat active Twitter and Facebook, but I think really where we're finding people are coming to is Instagram. So our Instagram handle is Kaur _ collective. And again, people can take a look at, you know, a lot of the quotes and things that we're working on. There is a way to message me on there as well. I just want to say, you know, I think thank you so much for including Kaur Collective in this. It's such an honor to have a conversation with you. I love that you reached out to me from the UK, and I think this is the beauty of Sikhi and how Kaurs are reaching out to one another across the globe to really do some of this work. This community building is kind of what I call it. And I think, so thanks for the seva that you're doing. I think it's incredible. And I think I just want to reiterate something that's so important to me is, you know, we don't have all the answers at Kaur Collective. We're looking for Kaurs and non-Kaurs and sings, you know, anyone, but particularly Kaurs, because our name is Kaur Collective, to really step up and showcase who they are. So if you want to collaborate with us, if you have great quotes, if you know the history of Sikhi, I encourage you to reach out. And I'm a pretty easygoing person, so I will kind of let you know where we're at taking new collaborations, but I think it's important to have the space for Kaurs to build things out and really honor their divine purposes. And I do want to mention that, you know, we're really wanting Kaurs to build out their expertise in new and modern kind of ways. So if you have something that you want to share with Kaurs, or you're kind of scared and unsure, reach out, and we have a team of people who will help you literally wrap ourselves around you, build it out in very quick amounts of times, and then help you launch it, and you know, launch it to our community, and ensure that we're continuing on this building out of legacy, of Sikhi legacy, and connecting women and everyone to their Sikh journeys.